In between dives on a charter boat, divers take a break. It's called an interval. And during that interval, you get a chance to talk to some people on the boat that you may not have known before, and you meet some pretty interesting folks. So we decided to do that here. Please join us for Interval Interviews. Hey everybody, I'm Captain Dennis with SQUALUS Marine Divers. This is a new thing we're doing that's called Interval Interviews, where we're going to talk to some people in the dive community and talk about what they're doing and kind of, give them an opportunity to reach more folks and promote the sport as a whole. Today we have Richard Hyman, who is one of the crew members from the Calypso with Jacques Cousteau. And Richard just has a book out, and your book is?
FROGMEN.
Okay, and that book is about his adventures and times with Jacques Cousteau. I'd like to welcome you to the first episode. It's a little new, and we're trying it out. And what can you tell the audience about yourself?
Hey, thanks, Dennis.
Yep.
Well, relative to Cousteau, it's just a great memory, life-changing experience. As way back in the 70s, I kept journals and have audio tape recordings and mementos, so kept all this stuff, and then I finally wrote a book about it.
Okay, cool.
And so it's something I've been happy to get the story out.
Now, like I was saying earlier, off camera, a lot of people don't know who Jacques Cousteau is, who are like under 30 years old. And I mean, I was just on the tail end of it. I remember hearing his name because I was really into like sharks and stuff when I was a kid. And for me, Jaws got me into, oddly enough, Jaws got me into going into the water. But Cousteau really kind of set everything off with his show in the 70s. What was he like as a person? I mean, was he just curious.
Yeah, well, and if you don't mind, let me just interject that, back in the day, back in the 70s, it was the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau.
Right.
7 p.m. ABC Sunday nights, and there were like 5 networks back then. There wasn't all the cable options. So people just looked forward to it. I spoke at the Boston Sea Rovers, and this is a funny story. The Boston Sea Rovers, great dive conference, and a lady came up to me and said, when we were little, my parents said if we didn't behave, if we didn't stop misbehaving, we were not going to be able to watch the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau.
So the parents used it as leverage.
Yeah, so that was a funny story. But Cousteau, he was the real deal.
Yeah.
I'm so happy I can, sincerely say that. Hardest working person I've ever met in my life. A great man, very sincere.
And his family's still active in the underwater community.
They are. They're doing their own thing. They're in touch with one another, but they're not united.
Right.
They're doing their own thing.
Right.
He was a great guy.
Right.
One of the great characteristics about Cousteau is that he had the ability to get the most out of any individual that worked for him.
Right. Okay.
So he inspired people so much that that was one of his strengths.
Right. I mean, what we do here is we try to do a lot with very little, and we do the best we can, as I'm sure he did as well. Now you're certified to dive, right?
Yes.
Now I'm curious, what got you interested in diving and being underwater? That's I find that there's a lot of people that watch the show that are kind of on the fence of whether or not they want to learn how to dive, and I'm just curious, like from people who are accomplished, they've done things in the dive community. What was the thing that drew you to the water?
Well, I think I was always drawn to the water, even as a baby, as a
Right.
little kid. I always loved the water. Loved Long Island Sound here, that I know you're very passionate about.
Right.
Grew up here, but I had a very unique opportunity to get exposed to diving.
Right.
I was invited. My dad was going up to L.A. And he worked with Cousteau. My dad's co-founder of the Cousteau Society.
Okay.
And he said, "You want to come along?" I just graduated from high school. I said, "Sure, I'll go with you." And we went out, and that night I'm having dinner with Cousteau, but actually...
Talk about jumping in feet first.
Yeah, and there was an expedition leaving for Saskatchewan, Canada, and Cousteau says, "We need a truck driver. Would you like to drive a truck with Yvan Giacoletto?"
Right.
Yvan spoke no English. I spoke very poor French. But I said, "Sure." And as I tell the kids, in today's world, I didn't have a smartphone. It was before smartphone. Right. I had no idea where Saskatchewan was, but I said yes. But back to your question. Before that dinner, we had left the Cousteau offices, and we were at Philippe Cousteau's house in Beverly Hills, and Philippe said, "Come on, let's get in the pool." And he introduced me to scuba.
So when a Cousteau
Yeah.
is introducing you to scuba,
Yeah.
I can understand how you get into it.
put the tanks on, and that was my first lesson.
Right.
And then everything else was history.
Very cool. So are you coming out with another book?
I'm working on another book. I've got actually several in mind, but the next one is actually still Cousteau related. It's going to be about Cousteau's business. And that might not sound very interesting, but it's actually pretty fascinating.
Well, we filmed some stuff in the sound that most people don't think are interesting, but you'd be amazed at the people that want to see it.
Yeah.
Lastly, I'm just curious, what can you say to people who are kind of like, why is this important? Like why is going underwater important? Why is, looking at, marine life, it's just underwater. I mean, I know there's some people that really dig it, and then there's some people that are just kind of like, that. It's not really important. So what would you say to that?
Well, I think it's knowledge, and seeing is believing, and that was part of Cousteau's intent, is bringing the underwater world into people's living rooms. Not necessarily that they would become divers, but they would see what's under there, and why do we have to care about the water? Why do we have to protect it? And you see, the beautiful creatures and just the whole importance of the underwater world and how that relates to us on land.
Well, what people say is, I know that they say that there's only 1% of living, anything that's alive on Earth, only 1% of it is on land, and 99% of it is underwater, which is crazy when you think about it. And for me, when I go underwater, it's like going to outer space.
Yeah.
It's another planet, like in the title of the show. But when people get a chance to see it, I mean, there's not a lot of people that are going to go through the process of getting certified and diving underwater. But when they get an opportunity to see it, then they start to care a little bit more about it. You know what I mean? They think if people see there's something worth protecting, then they say, all right, maybe it's not what I thought it was.
Yeah.
But, other than that, I want to thank you so much for coming today. And we look forward to your next book. And you should be able to get Richard's books on our website pretty soon. And thanks for checking us out. And be sure to stay tuned for the next interval interview.